Good morning, good morning, good morning, everyone, and good evening to those in the UK. Our guest today is from the UK, so she's sharing her evening and I'm sharing my morning. I'm really excited about being here. Thank you for watching Ask the Expert. I know you're going to love this because we need this at this time. We're having many, many challenges. So many people are arguing and upset. And I was thinking this morning that a big part of the challenge that we all have with each other is each one of our relationships is built on a need. Wouldn't you think? Maybe we have a love relationship that's built on a need. Maybe we have business relationships. Those are built on needs, whatever it is that we need. And as a result of needs, we certainly have expectations. Wouldn't you agree? I saw a guy say to this woman the other day, all I want to do is make you happy. And I thought, oh my gosh, that guy is really heading for a fall because who knows what her expectations are. Excuse me. So when you're thinking about relationships and you've got expectations involved, that's a big challenge because our expectations shift and change. Would you agree? As we grow, it changes. And nobody could read our minds. So how in the world are we going to keep up with expectations? So I'll be right back. Let's chat shortly. Now, our guest today is going to talk to us about imposter syndrome. And that goes perfectly with what I was just talking to you about with regard to expectations. And imagine, how could you really know anybody if they're dealing with being an imposter? Sort of like, wearing a mask, right? We cover up our face and we pretend to be somebody we're not. I get a lot of that when people are trying to do sales. They want to be a people pleaser in essence so that they can get the sale. But that's not the way to do it. The way to do it is to be authentic and build trust. Then you can build a relationship with someone. And I always say in sales, there's 3 ways to go. The first way is maybe this somebody will work with you, or maybe you can refer them to somebody else that could help them. Or maybe they'll even open a door for you to get on stage somewhere or whatever it is that you want to accomplish. But the thing is that we have to be authentic. If we're not authentic, people don't trust us. And guess what? We end up self-sabotaging. How many of you out there are self-sabotaging, where you just almost get there and then you don't quite get there because you decided in your mind that it wasn't going to work for you? Somewhere in your mind, you forgot to stay really focused and keep moving forward. Well, this is some of what we're going to talk about today. I love this topic because in a lot of ways, it has to do with how the universe works with us. And I'm always, always excited about that. So this woman that I'm bringing you today is an author and a transformational coach. And guess what? She's a psychotherapist. So she has a lot of insight into what goes on when it comes to making people tick. And she brings women suffering with imposter syndrome into sovereignty. And that's what I want to do, is talk about sovereignty right on the bat. And so let's get her on here so I can ask her what she means by that. Meet Sherine Lovegrove. Hi, Sherine. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Charlene. Thank you for inviting me.
I'm so glad you're here. And I don't know if you were listening to me
I
at the
was.
top of the show. Okay.
I
So
was.
explain to people what you mean by sovereignty.
Sovereignty really is about being able to own yourself. Really, it's about owning yourself, to know where you are in your body, feel that you are a complete body, know why you are here, what's the reason you're here. And in essence, you can rule your body, your mind, your soul, your spirit, and almost like the world around you in a very specific way that fits in an alignment with your sense of purpose. So sovereignty is really important in many, many ways, because it's an energetic. I know you love energy, and I know you love all
I
these kind of things.
do. That's my
Sovereignty
thing.
really is about an energetic exchange that happens, because we're not solid beings. We're not. Everything that we have in our body actually goes across boundaries. Yeah, we have our cells have boundaries, and there are energetic bonds. And basically, when we're not sovereign, things go wrong. Basically, we start
Yes.
leaking. It's kind of like when you're not sovereign in your body, you might end up with illnesses, all sorts of things. Your immune system doesn't work well. All sorts of things go crazy. But not only that, when you're not sovereign, your relationships are not always okay. Neither, your wealth doesn't really work out very well. So in essence, pretty much everything doesn't work if you are not sovereign.
Well,
But when
wouldn't you
you are
agree?
sovereign, yeah,
Go ahead. But when you are, go ahead.
when you are sovereign, you're in a space where you're calm, you're collected. It's almost like you bring everything that's around you into you, so that you can do the work from a place of your heart, really. And I know you love working with the heart.
Oh, do I ever? Do I ever? So what you're saying is that we should lean into things, which is
Yes.
what I constantly say, instead of pull back and say, I'm not looking at that. We're
Yeah.
responsible for everything that goes on around us, everything that goes
Yeah.
on around us. It's just about how we think about it, right? It's how
Exactly.
what our perception is that makes a difference in our lives and our relationships. Is that right?
Exactly. And to think, maybe a nice way to think about it is, we live in a world within a world, and another world. We live kind of in this 3D world, and we have an effect on how we talk to ourselves. But how we talk to ourselves and respond will have an effect on how others are affected, but then how they will make meaning of our stuff. So all of a sudden, you've got this relationship of what we think about them, but they've also got a relationship of what they think about us because of the way we're behaving. And then very often, when we don't have a sense of relationship with ourselves or with others, we kind of start to think that actually nothing really is there for us either. So we don't even get a sense of our higher self, our purpose, our soul, or maybe even the idea that there's a God out there or a universe that supports us. And it does support us.
Yes, it does if we think properly.
Exactly. And
I love it. I love it when people say, oh, I want this. But then about 2 days later, they've lost that focus and now they want this other thing. And so I always tell them, the universe is getting confused because 1 minute you want one thing. And then I talk to you 3 days later and you totally changed your mind and absolutely forgotten about this other thing. And that's why nothing ever works, because there's no focus, no long-time focus.
Exactly. And let me tell you something, that's a key factor in imposter syndrome. A key factor. You often find people don't know what they want and they go chasing after so many things. And it's one of the key things that I kind of ask people, and I look at what have they been doing all their life? And you often find that they're following somebody else's purpose and not their own. They kind of go, oh, that looks good. I think I'd like to do that. And they go and do it. And then they don't necessarily become, professional at that. What they do is they go, okay, I've done that. Well, let me go and do that. Let me go and do that. And they just get hooked on doing all sorts of things, but they never stay long enough to really, really, really know what it is that they want.
Yes. And they
Yeah.
don't even know who they are. I had
No.
a client the other day that had the transformation treatment. And he said to me, I've tried to be everybody else. I don't even
Yeah.
know who I am anymore.
Oh,
And that's really, really scary,
yeah.
to feel that you don't know who you are, where you're
Yeah.
headed, what you're here on earth to do, and you hate what you're doing, but you don't know what else to do. That's
Yeah.
a really sad place, because then that's the exact imposter syndrome that you're talking about, where we don't come forward, we're not real, and we're
Yeah.
just miserable with everything that goes on around us.
Exactly. Exactly. And when I think about it, and when I said that, when I started writing my book and going over my life story, I really started to see that I was doing things. Yes, I was a bit of a people pleaser, but actually it wasn't really that. It was just that I had this really low sense of confidence that then stopped me from putting myself forward. And very often I would do wonderful ways of what I call sophisticated hiding.
I was hoping you were going to talk about
Beautiful, sophisticated hiding. It's
that.
kind of like you're really good at helping other people become successful. You're really good at telling them what to do and helping them through that journey. And then you don't ever take credit for yourself. You never look and see that you see that you can take credit. Or if someone says, oh, you look really good, you'll go, no. These are old. You don't necessarily own what you have earned and what you have thought. Well, even if you're wearing something that's really nice, and even if it is old, you go, yeah, that's great. I love this. Yeah. And what you're doing is you're constantly telling yourself that I'm worth it. I'm worth it. And a lot of people with imposter syndrome will have damaged childhoods, or childhoods that were not optimal for themselves. And
Yes.
they didn't get to learn how to shift and change. And I really do think that if you find yourself doing some of the things which imposter syndrome is really about, when we gauge our success on a result. So very often happens in business women, or women that are competing against others, in a sense, like, for example, it's all to do with your capability. So if you say make cakes, and you have a daughter that you've got to make cakes for school, you might go and buy say, for example, they're homemade cakes. You might end up buying cakes that are kind of like home economic cakes, so that people won't know that you didn't make them.
Yeah, that would be mean, because I don't want to do it.
Still a fraud. And so what you're doing is you hide little things, and these are really interesting. But also, you won't. One of the things is you don't put yourself in for jobs that you could probably do, because women tend to not take as many risks as men. And the crazy thing is, we want connection, so we will put connection first before we will put success very often.
Yeah, and we keep trying to please other
Exactly.
people in
Yeah.
order to thinking that that's what's going to make life happy, because you give them everything they want, but then the expectations change, and then the person that's doing that gets all mad at them because they changed, they shifted the game, the rules got changed when nobody was looking.
And you said a really important point there. That's so, and I said it to someone yesterday as well. I said, Gottman talks about how we make a contract within the first 10 minutes of a relationship. And when you obviously make those relationships, you're not aware you're bringing all your past with you into that relationship. So you automatically form into these patterns. So your relationships form if you become a helper, or if you become sort of a person that's more of a taker, or whatever it may be. But what will happen is you will set up that dynamic, and then everybody gets used to that dynamic until somebody changes it. But that is a contract. Believe it or not, it may not be a verbal contract, but we create these contracts. And this is why people get upset, because we break the contract. But the problem is when we break the contract, we're breaking it from reaction often. And so we don't go out of the way to find a way in which we can negotiate well enough that perhaps we would get a better contract. We can renegotiate the contract instead. What we do is we change, and that causes the strife. So it's really about learning a way in where you can introduce new topics, new ways of talking to people, and actually being authentic and honest and open in a way that's loving and gentle and also firm. So you have to know what you want. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, I have
you know what you want, but also you need to, you also want to keep the relationships, and if you stay with that idea, I want this relationship to work this way, it makes a big difference because they don't feel frightened that you're going to leave them necessarily.
You know, I have a perfect story about this.
I love your story.
And it's so simply ridiculous. With my last husband, who I adored, he was really, he was all about being a people pleaser.
Yeah.
And I knew this, and I kept trying to shift that behavior because I wanted him to be comfortable within himself. I didn't want him to be just dependent on me, because that's a huge dependency when somebody is dependent on you and they're trying to make you happy all the time. Then if you make the slightest shift, they get angry. So here's what happened. So we were married for 17 years, right? And then one day I said, you know, I really don't want to eat meat for now. Oh my gosh. He did all the cookings of the dinners, and he didn't want me to. I always used the wrong dish or whatever it was. He had, you know, that kind of thing. So when I said I didn't want to have meat, he went ballistic. Well, now what am I supposed to cook? What am I supposed to do now? I never asked him to cook for me in the first place. Exactly. That's the interesting thing. And he got so angry with me. And I said, you know, why can't we just talk about this? You know, I don't think it's going to be for an eternity. Maybe it's only for 60 days. Can we just talk about this and maybe have some new recipes if you want to do the cooking, or I could cook? And oh man, he wasn't going to listen to me at all. And he said, you know, you're constantly changing. You're always changing. I can't even keep up with you. And he was mad at me about this stupid little thing for 3 days. And there was nothing I could do to shift it.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm talking about. And because he wanted me to be seated in with only these expectations that he could fulfill and never make any changes. And that is hard. Yeah, exactly. That's why I wanted to tell the story. Yes, I did. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And he, and also, bless him, he probably didn't have a reference where he could even think about, because I mean, a lot of people, I mean, when I was a vegetarian for a period of time, people would say, well, I just, you know, it's too much hard work to think about making really nice vegetarian food.
Yes.
Because it's outside their remit, and almost like when, and for them, maybe when you say, I don't want to eat meat, for them, it's like, I'm no good anymore.
Oh, that's a good concept. I hadn't thought about that.
And they think, well, oh, you now you don't need me. I'm good at my meat. Now you don't need me. So and then you offer, I'll cook. And then they go, oh my God.
Oh gosh, the one who doesn't even know what dish to use.
Exactly. And it's really crazy. They just, you know, it just happens. And unfortunately, they don't know what it is. They don't know what it is. And sometimes you can't get past that barrier. Sometimes you can. And, you know.
So for the audience, tell us what would be a better way to say something like that to someone?
Well, I would just really, I would probably go and I would do a bit of priming beforehand. I would start talking about things like, yeah, this is really good. You really need to prime people, because when you give them this conversation, it happens and it's like, boom, it's here.
Yeah.
So if you kind of say, you know, I wonder what it'd be like to be vegetarian for a while. There's been this thing going on, and I've been feeling a little off lately, and I wonder, it might be quite nice for me to try and be a vegetarian. So I'm just wondering if, one day in a week I can have just a vegetarian meal, and because I want to see how it goes. So it's always about doing something really slowly with someone that's kind of really quite entrenched in their way. And you want to really open it up nice and gently. If you do it up front and you haven't seeded, it's going to be a lot more difficult. It's always going to be a lot more difficult because it's unexpected. Their expectations and all their stuff that comes with it, if you're unable to actually deal with that, it's going to make it very challenging. So yeah, it is about saying, perhaps, I know that you cook all the time for me, and I'm really, really grateful. And I really, really appreciate this. And you know what it does for me? It really allows me to do the other things that I love doing. So I'm really grateful though. And at the same time, I really would like to try having a few more vegetarian. And I don't know whether it'll work. I don't know whether I will do that.
The element of doubt.
Would you mind just for a little while that we
Yeah.
could just try it for a couple of days? Do you see? So what happens is they go, oh, I'm already looking after you. You're appreciating me. You're liking me. You're not going to throw me away. All of these things. And then their little feathers, the ruffled feathers, they come down.
Yes.
But I think there's something really important about seeding. Really important about the seeding. And don't underestimate it. Anybody that's here, don't underestimate. You want to change something, start very small and just kind of mention it. Because if they're in the contract, you're breaking it. And in fact, you are. And yes, it's your right to break the contract. But is it fair to just make it abrupt without any warning? It's kind of like being told you've got a bill coming, and they give you a D-Day on that day that you're meant to have it without getting any warning that your bill is coming. Yeah, it's the same thing. So it's really about looking at the idea that everything we do in a relationship has a contract, and how if we want to change it, we have to renegotiate it. But it's a hell of a lot easier if you do seeding first.
Yes, I like that. And I talk about seeding also when you are talking about your programs in sales also. Yeah, same idea, seeding. What do you think about? I have an idea, and that would have been a really good thing to do at that time.
But Sherine, it's really so funny. People think that relationships are separate from business.
Yes, they do.
But actually, they're the same. The contracts, in a way, are the same. You're the same person in business as there. If you're not the same, then you're a split personality.
Ah, that's interesting.
So you need to bring that authentic self all the way through. Yeah.
Yes.
So by being kind and know what you want, and know that you have real high regard for the person in front of you, as a soul that is equal to you, then you start from that place of empathy, and it just really helps to bring that possible energy that's going to fly up down before it even gets there. But seeding is just so important, because as you say, the number of times that you hear the same thing, they've shown in research now that if you give a child something 17 times, they'll like it.
Well, and they'll even think it's their own.
Music. Yeah.
Yeah. They'll think it's their own. And a lot of people are that way. If you throw out an idea, they'll come back to you 30 days later and go, you know what? I have an idea. And I'm like, what the heck? I think I told you that 30 days ago.
And you want to get so annoyed that people just
there's no point in it. It's like, yeah, you got it. That's a great idea.
Yeah. I had to learn really early not to be too attached to my ideas, because actually all ideas, when you go to sleep at night, we are in community with the whole of the world.
Right.
Yeah, the Schumann frequency that goes around. So how do we know that our idea is unique?
Well, usually it's never my idea.
Yeah.
It
We're
really
just
isn't. It's
resonating
always
at that
based
idea.
on the ethers are what give me
Yeah,
the ideas.
yeah,
It's not
yeah,
about things that I've come up with. And
exactly.
usually it's a pretty good idea, which is why I just give it out. And then somebody else goes, wow, I think this is a really good idea. Let's try this. I do it, when I really do it is when I'm working with people on developing their programs,
Yes,
because you can't just tell people what to do. That's my feeling. You have to
yeah,
give them an idea, let them rest with it for a week, and then go, so what are your thoughts? What do
yeah,
you think about it? Because they need to buy in, or they're never
mm,
going to sell it.
yeah, yeah.
Right?
And everything, and I think what you said really was really good there, because everything is a sale, isn't it?
Yes.
Even though we may not be doing a sale, as a client is a sale, because when
Right.
I see them and I seed an idea, which is, how about you try and do this, this, and this? They may not take it. You may get them to just write down something or what they think about it.
Mhm.
And the next time they hear it again, or they hear it in themselves, that's selling.
Mhm.
That's genuinely just letting them get used to the idea before they come up with what's going to work uniquely for them. Yeah, because it's like anything. We absorb stuff all the time, and we make sense of it, and it comes in all sorts of forms, and we've got all our patterns that are there too. And so it needs to kind of bypass those patterns as well, and
Yeah.
get to the space where it's going to tap in the right place. Yeah.
So I think we made some really good points today about relationships. One being, and you tell me if I miss anything, one being that even if you meet somebody for 10 minutes, you've suddenly established a contract that
Yeah.
you didn't even know you had, right?
Yeah. Yes.
And
It's scary, isn't it?
yes, it is scary. It is so scary.
So you
And
better know what you want.
yes. And another one is actually seeding an idea so that people can get used to it. It's like
Yeah.
that bullfrog theory. You know the
Yes.
bullfrog theory?
Yes. Yes.
Where if you have a bullfrog in the frying pan and it's nice and calm and warm and it's going, whoa, this is cool. I like
And
it
it cooks.
here. And then you make a shift, right? And you turn the burner all the way up. The bullfrog's going to go, wow, and jump out of the pan. And that's why we have so many divorces, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, the
Exactly.
bullfrog jumped out of
Exactly.
the pan. So, I think that these are really good um, principles to think about. And
Yeah.
also the hiding out, not being real.
Yeah.
And, I loved what you said about different personalities for different things that you're doing instead of trying to be authentic all the
Yeah.
time. I think
Yeah.
that's so important. And Sherine, we're almost out of time. Do you have any final thoughts you'd like to share with the audience?
Well, I think the final thing is to really have an understanding that when we relate in the world, we're always relating, from our first and foremost from ourselves. But what we may be doing is not necessarily true. So we may have an experience which we see. We need to look at what this means for me, then see how if I believe this, how does that affect other?
Mm-hmm.
And if say, for example, I'm hiding out, what are others perceiving? So if I'm hiding out, it means they think I might not want the job, or they may not want the work, or they may
Mm-hmm.
think, well, maybe I shouldn't help her because she's a strong person. She doesn't really need help. So they don't offer. But what you think then is, oh my God, they're mean, or they don't care about me. So we make up assumptions based on the idea of how we are. So we need to be really clear how we are, very clear at what we're doing and how that affects others and how others perceive us. And
Mm.
that's really important as a result of this behavior. And then about connecting to the idea that when we make a decision, when we move out of thinking and decide, that in actual fact, our brain works for us. It allows us, I always say this is what I believe the law of attraction is. We start to orientate in the direction of the decision we make. And so we start to see the opportunities that are there. And
Absolutely.
and then we think it's spooky because all of a sudden they're coming in. But it's only because we've done a shift. It's only because we've done a shift and our brain now is resonating and triggering for those particular things that we've set a program for.
Yes, absolutely. And it could be a thought from long, long ago.
Oh yeah. Oh
Sherine,
yeah.
thanks so much for being with me today. I think you gave us some great information about
Oh,
how to rule your kingdom, right? This
yes.
is how you actually rule your kingdom. And I want to thank you so much for being here today.
Take care. Thank you very much.
So everyone, I really hope you enjoyed that. You got some really good insights. That's why I wanted to bring Sherine on to talk to you. And I had put her Facebook link up. Go connect to her because she does or has been doing some lovely Facebook Lives that you might enjoy. And she is from the Authors and Speakers Visibility Playground. This is a part Ask the Expert is a part of the Authors and Speakers Visibility Playground. That's why I have such wonderful guests that come on here. And we are on every Friday. And I look forward to seeing you again next week. And if you ever need to know anything, by all means, ask the expert.